Okay, so now that we've established, right, that we need to pick a specific theory, right, we kind of need to look at something here, right? Because this is kind of a lot that we have to do for an assignment, right? For especially for one, and we have to do it again for another one, right? So the thing that should be good that we should know, right, is that if we are when we are picking a specific theory, we should pick one um, that we know um, that we know well, that we know we could talk about all day long. That's so it doesn't mean necessarily one that's easy, but one that pick one that you know about, you feel comfortable talking about, and you can write about it easily, right? I think some students, right, they want to like show off what they know. They pick something that's really hard, or maybe something that's really hard and they don't really like. You're always going to have an easier time if you pick a theory that you enjoy writing about, or talking about, or thinking about, and then picking that one. So that's going to be the first thing that I pick, right? Two, I think sometimes like there are students, right, that have like some frustrations, with their assignments. They're like, well, what can I do to improve, right? So when writing this kind of thing, right, I think the first thing that you need to do, Ron, is make sure um, you complete all assignment guidelines. And that you are also following the rubric for the assignment that is posted and has been posted since day one. So I think some of you don't even like look at these assignments until like the day that they're due or the day before, and you don't. And some students don't look at the rubric, right? And that's really not a proactive strategy in terms of preventing or achieving like a higher grade, right? So that's kind of an issue. So if we look at this, right, we have all these guidelines that are put into place, right? So we're picking a theory, we have to outline the history, we have to explain how the theory predicts crime, the correlates, criteria, and policy implications, right? So we don't have to pick a theory, right? But let's say, for example, that what I would do is I would do these like kind of headlines, right? So if I was writing this assignment, I would pick, history of theory X, right? So that's one subheading. And then, I would write blah, right? Whatever that is, right? And then, the next subheading is going to be how theory predicts crime. So with the theory predicting crime, right? And then we're going to blah, blah, right? So when we're talking about this, right, when we are specifically saying how the theory predicts crime, we're not like if we took the example of learning theory, right? We're not saying people learn how to commit crime, wash our hands, and then we're done, right? There's a lot of components that go into that have to be discussed, right? We can't say, well, it does whatever, right? Or it's simple thing, because that means you just don't know what you're talking about, and that's a problem. We go back to our requirements, right? Then we're like, okay, well, now we're going to use correlates, right? So I would use the same correlates that you just talked about in the peer review assignment 2. There's no need to get new ones, right? So, if we are talking about correlates, right? So we need to discuss, if we picked age, if we picked sex, and we picked like poverty or socioeconomic status, right? How would our theory account for variations in this kind of format, right? Um, and then specifically, right, then we have to move into like criteria. Okay, so how do we judge our theory? Again, I would use the ones that you use from peer review 1. There's no need to write new ones, right? And so we'll see CPR2, and then use the ones CPR1. So use those. You still have to write them. You can't just see them in my last assignment because the people who are evaluating and grading you don't see them, right? So you have to write them and put them there. And then you have to apply them to the theory. And then for our last one, right, is our policy implications, right? Oh, so I forgot to put our blah here. So we'll put our blah here, and then, we get into our policy. If you follow this structure right here, where, we have each of these assignment components, right? We have a headline for this, right? It kind of tells you like a little bit guideline, like, oh, these are all the parts I need to complete. Here's what I've worked so far. Now I can ensure that I've, hit it. It also signals to me as a reader, like, okay, so at least this person has looked at the assignment requirements and I'm not having to hunt and like read paragraph, like, really find the nitty gritty into each of them. They seem to have an idea of it, right? So we have to do all of these. And this format here is the same that you'll do for peer review assignment 4, right? The only difference between those two is that, like, if you I'm going to pick a good theory for peer review assignment 3, you then have to pick a, quote, bad theory for peer review assignment 4. If you picked a bad theory in peer review assignment 3, you now have to pick a good one for peer review assignment 4. Hopefully that kind of, makes sense and clarifies it. So, so we'll pause this right now. Hopefully that's kind of useful, and we'll pick this up in just a second.